U.S. President Joe Biden has ended his faltering re-election bid. In a post on X, the 81-year-old said he would stay in his role as president and commander-in-chief until his term ends in January. "It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve as your president," he said, while adding, "I believe it is in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down." He also endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to replace him as the party's candidate.
They just paid 24% or 25%, either one of those numbers.
There's been a wave of public and private pressure from Democratic lawmakers and party officials for him to quit after his shockingly poor performance in a televised debate last month against Donald Trump, his Republican rival.
If we finally beat Medicare,
it took the spotlight away from Trump's false statements and put it squarely on Biden's fitness for another 4-year term. All his donors began to revolt.
Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin.
Other gaffes at a NATO summit did not help either. He invoked Russian President Vladimir Putin's name when he meant Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and called Harris Vice President Trump.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president.
When you get knocked down, you get back up.
Biden initially resisted pressure to step aside and sat down for rare television interviews. But polls showed Trump's lead in key battleground states widening, and Democrats began to fear a wipeout in the House and Senate. Just days ago, Biden was diagnosed with COVID-19.
Trump wanted to run against Biden.
Darrell West with the Brookings Institution says Biden's move creates problems for the Republicans, at least in the short term.
They're just going to have to recast the whole thrust of their campaign, which was saying Joe Biden was too old, he couldn't do the job, his family was corrupt. All that disappears now.
For his part, Trump told CNN on Sunday that he believed Harris would be easier to defeat in the November 5th election. It's unclear whether other senior Democrats might challenge Harris for the nomination or if the party would choose to open the field for nominations. Biden is the first sitting president to give up his party's nomination for re-election since President Lyndon Johnson in 1968. And it leaves his replacement with less than 4 months to wage a campaign.
Vice President Kamala Harris hit the ground running with the launch of her 2024 presidential campaign on Sunday. Campaign officials and allies made hundreds of calls on her behalf soon after President Joe Biden said he was pulling out of the race. They urged delegates to nominate her for president at next month's Democratic Party convention, and Harris pledged to unite the nation in her bid against Republican nominee Donald Trump. Biden said he would remain in the presidency until his term ends in January next year, while endorsing Harris to run for president in his place. It leaves his replacement with less than 4 months to wage a campaign before the November election. By late Sunday, Harris had already locked in the support of all the Democrat state party chairs, according to several on a conference call. Her prospects in November are less clear. Shortly after Biden's announcement, Trump told CNN, quote, "Harris will be easier to beat than Joe Biden would have been." However, polling immediately after last week's assassination attempt against Trump showed that Harris performs no better or worse statistically than Biden had done against the GOP nominee. Still, senior fellow at the Brookings Institute, Darrell M. West, thinks the shakeup will help the Democrats catch up in key swing states.
The polls have actually been moving in favor of Donald Trump over the last few weeks. I think her likely nomination will put Democrats in a strong position. She'll be very competitive in those crucial Midwestern states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And I think she also will put some of those other swing states that have started to slip away, places like Arizona, back in very strong contention for Democrats.
Several prominent Democrats, including potential Harris challengers such as California Governor Gavin Newsom, immediately backed the vice president. Despite that early show of support, a handful of the party's biggest names, including former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and former President Barack Obama, both praised Biden's decision but did not announce endorsements. Two other potential challengers, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, made no mention of the vice president in their statements. Harris is due to speak from the White House South Lawn Monday morning.
Packed into a classroom in the Indian city of Prayagraj, students cram for a variety of tests. This includes the prestigious civil services exam, in which passing it is needed to get a job as a federal government bureaucrat. According to government figures, 220 million people applied for federal jobs between 2014 and 2022, of whom 722,000 were selected. Tens of millions of young Indians chase government jobs every year, some repeatedly, even as the private sector expands. Despite living in the world's fastest growing major economy, the trend underscores cultural and economic anxieties facing many Indians. Many grapple with an uncertain employment market, where job opportunities, let alone job security, are hard to come by. Some, like Sunil Kumar, see government employment as more secure than private sector jobs. He said he would have worked in the private sector like any common man if there was no security in government jobs. For Maruf Ahmed, who has been running a cram school in Prayagraj since 2014, this has meant good business. He says his academy currently tutors some 25,000 to 30,000 students a year across 5 branches through physical and online classes. Success rates are low, with about 5 to 10% securing jobs, but demand remains high, he said.
This is one of the worst times, as it has never happened in the past that so many students have applied for a government job vacancy announcement. There are very limited vacancies, but there is an increased number of aspirants for these government job vacancies.
Across all levels of government, including armed forces, schools, health services and the military, nearly 6 million jobs remain unfilled. India's main opposition party, the Indian National Congress, has estimated. An email to the federal government seeking data on government employment and vacancies was not answered.
Bangladesh's Supreme Court on Sunday scrapped most of the quotas on government jobs that had sparked deadly student-led protests, killing at least 114 people in the South Asian country. Bangladesh Attorney General A.M. Amin Uddin said the jobs should be open to candidates on merit.
ডিভিশন আর্টিকেল 104 অনুযায়ী কোটা প্রথার একটি চূড়ান্ত সমাধান দিয়েছেন।
The Supreme Court's Appellate Division, according to Article 104, gave a final solution to this quota system. That is 93% quota for general people, 5% quota for freedom fighters and their kin, 1% for ethnic minority community, and 1% for third gender and physically disabled.
আর 1% হচ্ছে প্রতিবন্ধী এবং তৃতীয় লিঙ্গ।
Nationwide unrest sparked following student anger against the quotas that included reserving 30% of government positions for families of those who fought for independence from Pakistan. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's government scrapped the quota in 2018, but the lower court reinstated it last month. Uddin told Reuters by phone that protesting students had said they were not involved in violence and the government would find those responsible for it. Witnesses said that the capital of Dhaka's streets were quiet following the decision after local media had reported scattered clashes earlier in the day. Demonstrations have also been fueled by high unemployment among young people, who make up nearly a fifth of the population. Military were patrolling with army checkpoints set up as the government had extended a curfew while bracing for the judgment. Internet and text message services in Bangladesh have been suspended since Thursday, cutting the nation's 170 million people off as police cracked down on protesters who defied a ban on public gatherings. Bangladeshis trying to leave the country crowded outside an airline office in Dhaka on Sunday. Mohammed Kosar told Reuters he was trying to return to Saudi Arabia. His flight was cancelled and a new one cost him over $200. He says if he is stuck in Bangladesh for 2 more days, he will need to beg in the streets. Local media reported the curfew was to resume for an uncertain time after a 2-hour break for people to gather supplies.
Tell me, what did you think about the news that Biden's stepping out of the race?
It was surprising, but definitely
it was the right thing to do.
It was the right choice and a good choice. I think that he's on his way out anyways, so.
But he had 1 term. Like, be happy with that. Give somebody else a shot.
Do you think this will give the Democrats more of a chance to beat Trump?
Oh yeah.
I should 100%. Hope so.
Yeah, 100%. Because definitely will give him a better shot.
I have mixed feelings about it, to be honest with you. On one hand, I think he could have stayed in the race a little bit longer. But after seeing the debate and hearing what other people were saying about him, I think it might be a good move for what he's doing. Some fresh blood. Harris polls well against Trump, so I think she has a real shot at winning.
I'm nervous. I hear so much animosity toward her, around the workplace, which is more conservative. But I mean, they weren't going to vote Biden anyway, so it's going to be interesting. I'm voting for whoever isn't Trump, and I wish I was more excited, but I'm still nervous.
I think she reminds me of like an auntie, like at the cookout or something. I don't know. Like she's a very likable person. Seems like she does have like a questionable time as the attorney, like putting people in jail for like smoking marijuana and stuff like that. So it'll definitely be something that I'm going to think about moving forward.
If it was in between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, I would vote for Trump.
Me personally, I'll stay where I'm at, in the middle.
I would pick Kamala Harris, definitely. Just because it's something different. The country, we still have not had a woman president yet. So what better opportunity now for that change to happen in this day and age? And plus, representing, African American, being a woman, I'm all.
I'm leaving this morning on a very important trip to the United States at a time when Israel is fighting on 7 fronts and where there's great political uncertainty in Washington. I will address, for the 4th time, both houses of Congress as the Prime Minister of Israel. I will seek to anchor the bipartisan support that is so important for Israel. And I will tell my friends on both sides of the aisle that regardless who the American people choose as their next president, Israel remains America's indispensable and strong ally in the Middle East. I plan to see President Biden, whom I've known for over 40 years. This will be an opportunity to thank him for the things he did for Israel in the war and during his long and distinguished career in public service as senator, as vice president, and as president. In this time of war and uncertainty, it's important that Israel's enemies know that America and Israel stand together today, tomorrow, and always. Thank you.
Up its plain and policy meeting last week with a warning from officials that the economy faced a bumpy road ahead. On Monday came signs of a response. The country's central bank surprised markets with cuts to key rates. Among other moves, benchmark loan prime rates were lowered by 0.1 of a percentage point. The official Xinhua news agency cited a source close to the bank saying it was a decisive move to hit growth targets. Analysts say the cuts come amid signs that economic momentum is flagging. Headwinds include an intractable crisis in the country's vast property market. China has seen home sales and prices slide as giant developers battle for survival. Surging debts and looming deflation are also worries. Some economists warn all that could see growth stagnate, as happened to Japan after its economic bubble burst some 30 years ago. Policymakers may have had an eye on the US Federal Reserve before they cut rates Monday. One analyst said the prospect of reductions there gave China's central bank room to move without hammering the country's yuan currency. The yuan did drop against the dollar following the rate cut, but later pared some of those losses. Nvidia is working on a new version of its flagship AI chips that is meant to avoid US restrictions on sales to China. That's according to Reuters sources. They say the new silicon will be compatible with Washington's export controls. There was no comment on the report from the company. The AI chip champion unveiled its Blackwell semiconductors in March. It's thought the new product for China will be a derivative. The US tightened controls on the export of chips to China in 2023. It wants to prevent breakthroughs in supercomputing that could help the country's military. Recent reports claim more controls are likely, with Washington pressuring allies like Japan to impose further controls too. Since the US curbs were introduced, Chinese tech giants including Huawei have sought to develop their own alternative semiconductors. That's a challenge Nvidia would like to defeat, with China accounting for over a quarter of its sales before the recent tensions began.
Openly discussed the extensive preparations required for the Met Gala, yet she consistently looks flawless at the event. However, she recently revealed on the SheMD podcast that a skin condition nearly spoiled her look one year. She shared, "It's only this one spot that will itch, and it will really, really itch when it does." Psoriasis is a chronic autoimmune condition that speeds up the skin cell growth cycle, resulting in thick, scaly patches on the skin. These patches are often red, inflamed, and can cause intense itching and discomfort. The rapid turnover of skin cells and associated inflammation lead to these uncomfortable symptoms, significantly impacting a person's quality of life. Kim Kardashian shared her personal struggle with psoriasis, revealing how it affected her ahead of the major event. "When I started to get a little bit desperate was when it started to cover my face. There was a spot really close to my eye and it would just burn a little bit. I remember I had the Met Ball coming up that week and it was covering my face." Despite this challenge, she managed to attend the event, showcasing her resilience in managing the condition. "Was that stress-related?" Hanni inquired. "I can imagine something caused that. Had it happened on your face before?" Hanni's question about the potential stress-related cause of the flare-up prompted Kardashian to reflect on her situation. She noted that it was the first time she had experienced such a flare-up on her face and hinted at various underlying factors that might have contributed to it. Kim Kardashian responded, "It hadn't, no. I'm trying to think of what I was going through at the time. There's a lot I could say." In preparation for the 2022 Met Gala, Kim went to extraordinary lengths to fit into Marilyn Monroe's iconic dress. She adhered to a strict diet, reportedly losing 16 pounds in just 3 weeks. This drastic weight loss method drew significant controversy, with critics arguing it prompted unhealthy body standards. Kim also faced criticism for wearing Monroe's historic dress, with concerns about potential damage.